Breaking the glass ceiling, we take a look at some of the trailblazers who have inspired women politicians everywhere. Rescue teams search for survivors in Indonesia's main island of Java as the death toll from Monday's quake rises to at least 162. China's commitment to zero COVID is put to the test as Beijing reports its first deaths in months. Plus, the enemy within. Prosecutors say a former army colonel promised to surrender to China. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Prosecutors are seeking a 12-year sentence for an army officer who promised to surrender to Beijing in the event of a Chinese invasion. Prosecutors say Colonel Huang received monthly bribes from China beginning in 2019. By January of this year, he had received nearly $18,000. Huang had photographed himself in uniform holding a written pledge of surrender. By the time he was exposed, he had served in the army for 35 years. Prosecutors are also trying Huang's go-between for Chinese authorities, retired military officer Shao Weiqiang. When it comes to gender equality, Taiwan is one of the most progressive countries in Asia, especially in politics. Not only does Taiwan have a female president, more than 40% of the seats in the legislature are also held by women. Huang has more.
If there's one person who's become a symbol of gender equality in Taiwan politics, it's the nation's first female president, Tsai Ing-wen. She was elected in 2016 and went on to win re-election in a landslide in 2020. Time magazine named her one of the most influential people in 2020 and the second most powerful politician in the world in 2021. That's for her efforts to keep China in check.
政府要努力的第二个面向，就是要用尽全力捍卫台湾民主自由的价值跟生活的方式。
Before Tsai, the highest-ranking woman in Taiwanese politics was former Vice President Annette Lu. Like Tsai, she's also from the Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP. She was vice president for 8 years from 2000 to 2008, and she'd been calling for democracy long before the founding of the DPP. Even now, she has continued to be a strong pro-Taiwan voice.
就是说，他必须要放弃武力犯台，也必须拆除飞弹。
Another woman who helped found the DPP is Chen. Chen was one of 8 dissidents, along with Annette Lu, who were arrested during the 1970s in a KMT crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrations. Chen served 6 years in prison. Later, she would go on to serve as mayor of Kaohsiung, once Taiwan's second largest city, for 12 years. And now, on the other side of the aisle, we have Hong Xiu-zu from the opposition Kuomintang, or the KMT. Hong served as legislator for 26 years and was the first woman to be elected party chair. Her straight-talking style has gotten her the nickname Little Hot Pepper, and in recent years, she made frequent trips to China in hopes of improving ties.
所以这次来也很好，收获很多。 我们觉得能够对于未来两岸和平稳定的一个发展，互相的交流，相信还是能够有很好的一个收获。
Taiwan still has a lot of work to do to reach gender equity in politics, but these trailblazers have made it possible for other women to set their sights on one day holding the highest office in the land. Damon Lin and Huang for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about what life is like as a woman in Taiwanese politics, TaiwanPlus's Divya Gopalan spoke to former Vice President Annette Lu.
It must have been so difficult to be the first woman at such a high position of power. Can you tell me some of the challenges you faced and what kind of a reaction you often got?
Traditionally, the woman standing next to the president is his wife. So when I was elected, and always stood side by side with the president. Some people just couldn't, accustomed to it. Especially they thought the vice president should be, no voice, doing nothing. But but for charity. But I was elected, so I insist to do and to say what I believe to be right. So after 2 years, culture shock, people get used to see me not as the political wife of the president, but as the vice president of the nation.
What would you say is the biggest sacrifice you made so that women in Taiwan could have a political career, and not only any political career, but one that would lead them to the top of the ladder?
Well, I sacrificed not for women. I sacrificed for human rights, not just women's rights. I delivered a speech at Human Rights Rally in 1979 for 20 minutes, and later I was sentenced to 12 years. So, but I wouldn't say I enjoy sacrifice, but I never regret, because I knew I have to pay the price, and I paid, and I saw the fruit. Now we have democracy.
Given your background and the rights you fought for, not only for women, but the whole country and the nation, can you tell me how you think the current government is dealing with China, particularly with China increasing its power and influence in the region?
Taiwan is too tiny compared to giant China. Yet we are too close to each other. So how to deal with China is a big question. Not easy, especially we also rely on American support so much. It happened that currently a big struggle between, I call it Chinese dragon and American eagle. According to an African proverb, where two elephants are ready to fight, all the tiny animals shall run away and the grass will be ruined. That's the situation in Taiwan. All the problem is caused by the confrontation between America and China. But America is too far away from China, where Taiwan is too near, too close to China. So both want to use Taiwan to be their battlefield. That's all.
Taiwan's upcoming local elections are usually fought on issues of daily governance as relation with China takes a backseat. But with many political parties putting cross-strait relations at the heart of their policy platforms, the issue of how to deal with Beijing is never far from the surface. That's the case for the Chinese Unification Promotion Party, one of the very few parties in Taiwan advocating for unification with China. Our reporter Ed Moon caught up with the party's leader and one of their candidates to find out more.
举牌警告，请你们立刻停止违法集会。我们解散的同时，君悦酒店喝咖啡，我们今天在那边吃中餐，可以吗？可以。民主吗？
A clash with police on the streets of Taipei. For most politicians, it would be headline news. But for Zhang Anle and his Chinese Unification Promotion Party, it's just another day. Taiwanese politics is roughly divided into two main camps. Those who'd prefer to remain separate from China, and a smaller number who would one day like to be part of China. And then there are those on the fringes like the Unification Promotion Party that want Taiwan to unify with the Communist People's Republic of China under a one-country, two-systems model, like Hong Kong. And it wants it as soon as possible. It's a position that's far from the mainstream. Since democratizing in the 1990s, Taiwanese support for unification with China has dropped from a high of 22% in 1996 to just 6.4% this year. The CUPP's Zhang is notorious in Taiwan for reasons other than pushing for unification. He makes no secret of his background in organized crime. He spent 10 years in jail in the United States for drug trafficking. He's known as the White Wolf, although the origin of that nickname is somewhat mundane.
我现在皮肤黑啊，那时候皮肤白，另外一位皮肤黑，所以他叫黑狼，我叫白狼，就这么巧，没什么特殊意义。
Zhang was sent back to Taiwan from the US after leaving prison. but he quickly got into trouble again for his links to organized crime. That led to him fleeing Taiwan in 1996 for China. He wouldn't return for almost 2 decades. Now that he's back, his focus is on pushing Taiwan into the arms of Beijing.
我们成立中华统一书展的目的呢，是促进两岸的和平统一。为什么呢？因为只有两岸的和平统一，才是我们台湾人民幸福的最佳保证。
Despite little support for its ideas, Jiang and his party have an outsized voice in Taiwan. That's because of the regular protests they hold, criticizing Taiwan's government and its supporters in the West. The party has never come close to winning seats in Taiwan's national elections, but it has enjoyed some success at the local level. It currently has 1 elected neighborhood chief and has hopes of gaining a county council seat in this November's vote. It's all part of a strategy aimed at building grassroots support for the party's goals.
大家早安，我是第5选区登记第3号的苗栗县议员候选人陈婉晶。
Although Zhang spoke openly to TaiwanPlus about running as a candidate for the Unification Party, none of her campaign materials mentioned the party's name. Zhang says her main concern is tackling drug abuse, but she needed some guidance on the question of China.
两岸和平统一是两岸什么共和国？中华人民共和国。哦，什么？而且我们的经济目前在台湾并非能够独立，我们需要中国，我们需要统一。我全力支持统一，全力以赴。所以我希望这次婉晶能够顺利的进入议会，好来和我们的乡亲来发表正面的。我们中华统一促进党不是黑道。 对，张安的总裁是一个非常乐于助人。
The party's strong support for unification on China's terms often leads to clashes with authorities, and many question whether it is receiving Chinese money to fund its operations. That's a charge Jiang denies, although he makes no secret of the fact that his aims match Beijing's.
但是台湾要通过法律叫反渗透法，我说我是中共同路人，来办我。 我说我中共同路人，我不需要人家渗透。为什么我是中共同路人？因为我们同一条道路。
Political scientists say that so far, there's little evidence to suggest Jiang has persuaded many people. Despite spending big on their 2016 legislative campaign, they ended up with only 0.4% of the national vote.
It shows how unsuccessful they've been at trying to kind of win the hearts of Taiwanese voters, despite all that spending and media attention.
But with Beijing determined to eventually bring Taiwan under its control, groups like Jiang's, which are sympathetic to that aim, are equally determined to persuade Taiwanese voters that their future lies with China.
台独卖台，挑起战火，我们阵前起义，不做炮灰。
Rick E. and Ed Moon for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's export orders dropped sharply in October. The Economics Ministry says orders dropped 6.3% year-on-year. It's the biggest decline since February 2020. Demand for high-tech items and traditional products have slumped amid a global economic slowdown. The Ministry of Economic Affairs says the outlook remains uncertain. Global inflation, interest rate hikes, the war in Ukraine, and China's zero-COVID policy are all factors that could hurt export orders going forward. In China's capital, Beijing, parks and shops are shut as a fresh wave of COVID cases hits the city. As James Trader reports, the first deaths in the capital in 6 months are damping hopes the country will move away from its stringent zero-COVID policy.
In China's capital, a grimly familiar sight. Beijing authorities have shut shopping malls, schools and museums in response to the city's first COVID deaths in 6 months. Cases have been surging across the country. City officials said epidemic prevention was at its most critical moment. Unlike other countries in the world, China is yet to fully reopen its borders. Visitors to Beijing from anywhere in China will now have to quarantine for 3 days.
当前国内疫情点多面广频发，我市疫情新增病例持续 高位增长，社会面病例数持续上升。
Economic powerhouse cities Guangzhou and Chongqing have seen the largest rise in cases. The two cities alone accounted for more than half the country's 28,000 new cases. And overseas, that's stoking concern harsher lockdowns could be coming.
Negativ ist allerdings, dass in China die Neuzahlen an Infektionen Corona massiv angestiegen ist. Die große Gefahr, dass China wieder dicht macht und damit die Weltkonjunktur wieder abgebremst wird.
Almost 3 years since the first COVID lockdown in China, the trudging reality of life under its government's COVID-0 policy continues. The latest spike in cases, dashing hopes once more that it will be ending anytime soon. Andy Xue and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
A Taiwanese man famous for staging public protests has died. Tzu-hai made his name by staging one-man protests in view of television news cameras. For years, his pickets for various causes stole the spotlight from big news stories. John Van Trieste looks back at the life of the man Taiwan's media dubbed the Protest King.
Though not an anchor or a reporter, Tzu-hai was a regular fixture on Taiwanese TV news. Ke was locally known as Taiwan's so-called professional protester. When a story broke, he would often appear in front of news cameras, holding a protest sign. Ke passed away earlier this week, aged 66. First gaining attention in the 1990s, Ke's protests took aim at a number of issues, from the fairness of Taiwan's justice system to criticizing politicians. On occasion, he even became the news himself. In 2005, he brought a cow to a protest in front of the presidential office. Authorities confiscated and later euthanized the animal. Ke reacted by directing his anger at then Taipei Mayor Ma Ying-jeou, coining his famous slogan. Outside of his protests, Ke led a turbulent personal life. He unsuccessfully ran for political office several times and was imprisoned for forging documents and defrauding a bank. Ke was also jailed for threatening harm to his child and then wife amid allegations of domestic abuse. Even after his release, Ke continued to defy the prison authorities. In 2021, he succeeded in convincing Taiwan's constitutional court to declare penal labor unconstitutional. Ke retreated from the public spotlight after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He spent the last years of his life living alone in a van parked in the mountainous outskirts of Taipei. Police found Ke's body in his van on Monday. His sister said he had fallen twice the day before, hitting his head both times. He refused to seek treatment, a decision doctors say may have been fatal.
临床上还蛮常发现，就是有人撞到头，前一开始来检查都没有怎么样，就过了半个月、1个月，就人的反应越来越奇怪，然后再后来追踪检查都发现还是有慢性的脑出血。
As a controversial and unconventional life ends, even now, Ke is able to make the news one last time. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, an endangered group of seabirds have arrived in Taiwan, and it's a sight you will swoon over. Details after the break.
Taiwan heads to the polls. One of the most vibrant democracies in Asia is making decisions that will affect the future. We have reporters on the ground getting to know the candidates, covering Taiwanese election culture to catch the true pulse of Taiwan. Join us on November 26th for live results, in-depth analysis, and all the election stories that matter. Decision 2022, only on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Rescuers in Indonesia are searching for people still trapped in rubble after an earthquake killed over 250 people and injured more than 300 others. Officials have warned the toll could rise further. Louise Watt reports.
A day after a magnitude 5.6 quake struck the main Indonesian island of Java, rescuers are still looking for survivors. The earthquake has killed more than 160 people in the country's most densely populated province and injured hundreds more. This is the town of Cianjur, the earthquake's epicenter. And the shaking could be felt in the Indonesian capital of Jakarta, 75 kilometers away. The quake caused several landslides in Western Java and damaged more than 2,000 homes. Hospitals were overwhelmed with the injured. Many had to be treated outdoors.
Anak saya 7 Pak, belum ketemu. Belum ketemu sekarang Bapak, anak saya. Iya, lagi di dalam rumah, lagi main, anak-anak di bawah, saya di atas lagi ngambil jemuran. Ke bawah saya, aduh.
Authorities say more than 13,000 people have been displaced. And as rescuers continue their work, officials warn the death toll could rise further. Patrick, Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
The Taiwan Railways Administration says that a section of the Eastern Huadong Line will resume operations on December 28th. That date is nearly a month earlier than previously expected. The railway line was damaged by multiple earthquakes that rocked the area in late September, including a strong magnitude 6.9 tremor. It sustained twisted tracks and toppled bridges. The Huadong Line is a popular route linking the country's southeastern coast to the northern capital, Taipei. The number of passengers traveling on the line is expected to increase during the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday. Taiwan's Huang Shen has won a bronze medal at the 2022 World Taekwondo Championships in Mexico. Huang competed in the women's under 46 kilogram division. She defeated former world champion Kang Mi-ru of South Korea in the quarterfinals, but lost to Turkey's Rumia Ildirim in a semifinal. It was Huang's first time participating in an international competition. Her coach said her performance far exceeded their expectations. Taiwan has bagged a total of 3 medals at this year's championship, including a silver won by Luo Jialing and a bronze by Chen Boyan. Newly recruited basketball superstar Dwight Howard is likely to be out for 2 weeks after feeling knee discomfort. That's according to his team, the Taoyuan Leopards. Howard felt pain in his left knee after a teammate ran into his leg during Sunday's loss to the Taichung Suns. Doctors say there's no sign of serious injury, but they suggested that Howard rest for 2 weeks. That would mean the former NBA All-Star is likely to miss the Leopards' next 2 games. The first batch of Blackface Spoonbill to migrate to Taiwan this year has been spotted in the south. The endangered waterbirds make an annual migrations up and down Asia, with Taiwan one of their places they winter at. Jaime Okan has more.
A flock of black-faced spoonbills making themselves at home. This is the first group of these endangered birds to arrive in Taiwan this year. These spoonbills were spotted in the southern city of Tainan last week. The waterbirds usually spend their summers in waters near the Korean peninsula. But in the winter, they migrate further south to chase warmer weather, and Taiwan is one of their destinations. Parks in the south like this are prime resting and feeding spots for the birds. The areas on the outskirts of the city also offer great views of the animals to locals.
我很开心，就是动物跟植物跟人是共生共存的。那我觉得是很棒，因为在都市里面你难得可以看到这么多的生态。
But this hasn't always been the case. Over 3 decades ago, the black-faced spoonbills were nearly driven to extinction. But thanks to conservation efforts, their numbers have begun increasing in recent years.
So as you could see now, from 1990 when there were only around 200, now there are over 6,000. Well, actually, you could find black-faced spoonbill wintering in Taiwan in various places. One of the nice things about Taiwan in general is the ease with which you can be able to see wildlife, and particularly birds, without having to go very far distances.
With the black-faced spoonbill's numbers on the rise, both conservationists and locals are now hopeful these birds will become an even more common sight. Ricky and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwanese band Mayday has wrapped up its first tour of the United States in 5 years.
今天工作人员告诉我们，他们在门口问大家，有很多的人是00后。我想说，天哪！你们真的知道五月天的歌吗？你们真的听过五月天的歌吗？经过了今天，我认为是真的。
The group's 3 concerts attracted about 35,000 fans across venues in Las Vegas and New York. Mayday is famous in the Chinese-speaking world for its pop rock songs. Established in the late 1990s, the 5-member band is known for hits like Eternal Summer, Party Animals, and Contentment. Mayday is now headed to Singapore to continue a world tour. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we'll leave you with images of a breathtaking art exhibit in New York City using digital technology to screen Christmas images on giant panoramic screens. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.